Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dickson, wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you join today's podcast from. And any lethargy that you may hear in my voice is because we're kicking off the week with a recording first thing on a Monday morning. It's 8:30 on Monday, the 16th of May, to give you some context whenever you are tuning in to this podcast from. And it's not often that the studio is set up and running at this time on a Monday morning, I can tell you. But as always, it's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to welcome the guest that I'm about to bring on screen and into the podcast in just a few moments' time. Somebody who you will know from previous episodes of the Event Industry News podcast. And indeed, if you have been a visitor to either the in-person or the virtual Event Tech Live, a name that you'll know from our friends over at Conference Compass, Mr. Jelmer van Ast joins us from Amsterdam, I believe, this morning, certainly from the Netherlands. Jelmer, a very good morning to you, first of all.
Good morning, James.
A pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Yeah, hopefully I'm right in saying that you're over in the Netherlands, aren't you, joining us this morning?
Absolutely. Actually, from The Hague, close enough to Amsterdam. It's like Amsterdam South.
From The Hague. No, a beautiful part of the world for anybody that's been over to there. And as I said, a very good morning to you, Jelmer. Great to have you back on the episode and talking about event adaptability today. For those of you, our podcast followers who maybe have not tuned into an episode that you've been on before, let's have a little bit of a recap first of all about Conference Compass, so that our podcast listeners can get a feel for what it is that you guys do over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're Conference Compass. We've been in business now for almost 12 years. I've started this company in 2010, and we've focused from the very start on event technology and specifically mobile apps for conferences. So focusing on the kind of events that we very well understand, because me and my co-founder at the time were scientists ourselves, and we were visiting many conferences where the traditional, one-directional presentations with minimal engagement, minimal interaction was just a standard. And we set out to change that. I think with success, along with others in the industry, seeing how event tech has evolved and became such a part of what we do today. Well, then obviously with the pandemic, event technology became sort of the foundation of events to be able to run at all. And we've been able to make that switch together with our customers to allow them to have fully in-person, at the time online conferences and events, and now transitioning back to in-person conferences. So we've been evolving as well as an event tech company and as a set of people, in our team, adjusting to the situation and adapting ourselves to in the way we work, in the way we develop our technology, in the way we service our customers. And it's that adaptability, and I believe how this can apply to the event industry as well. It's really something that fascinates me, and like to talk to you about that in this podcast.
And you say, it fascinates you, and something that really jumped out to me there as you were speaking was when you were talking about being a scientist. And I know from for anybody who looks on your LinkedIn profile will see, I think that it said that you were studying for your PhD, a decade or so ago, I think it was. And that really jumped out at me when you said the word scientist then, because it has very much become a scientific process, hasn't it? The world of event technology, and when we look at the amount of data that the technology we have available to us now in the event industry, the amount of data that is output from these platforms, the analysis that we can do on that data, and the conclusions that we can draw or discount, to use a sort of science term, it is very much a scientific process now, isn't it?
Yeah, I like the way you said that. I'm not sure if I ever realized it that way, but you're right. I think for science, technology, for scientific, anything, it's data, it's modeling, and it's systemizing, I would say, just like that. So it's not just data; it's also building a model of what, let's say, how the world works, and in our particular case, how event technology, we believe, can be used to increase engagement at events. So we sort of built this model with our assumptions, And then there's the data that we collect and use to test those assumptions and draw conclusions. And what's really, really important there is to keep your eyes and your ears wide open and to listen and look honestly at what's in front of you, to not pretend that you know, but to really question yourself and the data and your assumptions all the time. I think that's what science should be, at least. And it's also something that we're trying to do, and that we firmly believe that the event industry needs to embrace in order to develop better events, to develop events that people, their attendees, their specific target audience is longing for to attend and is getting the value out of that they expect, that they need.
And I may be going not off topic as such, but on a slight tangent this morning, because the science thing has really sort of got my brain, even at this early hour on a Monday, working. And I may be getting far too clever for my own good here, but good science and a good study, always has a baseline. Something to that you can look at. There's your baseline, and the results and what you are analyzing is all based on off that baseline. And it strikes me that in the events industry, just thinking about it in that sort of way, the way that technology is developed and the way that we have used it in the events industry, everyone will have a slightly different baseline, so nobody's results are going to necessarily be accurate for another. One event's results will not necessarily be accurate for another event. That's why we have to have this adaptability built into our technology now, because we are working with events and with clients, all of whom have a slightly different baseline when it comes to the results that they want to see.
Absolutely. I think it's tempting perhaps to especially if you come from a place of vulnerability and believing that you don't have all the answers and everyone else seems to know all the answers, and as an event planner you may feel overwhelmed thinking, okay, like I guess I just take that as a fact, just read those blogs, see those smart people talk about it, that's probably the way it is, let's just do it. Not sure I fully get it, but let's just go on. And I think that is wrong. But it's super logical, and it comes out of like I said, a place of vulnerability and perhaps being driven by the fast moving train of having to push your event and meet your deadlines. I think it's always good to take the time, even though you may think you don't have the time, to take a standstill, to take a step back, to open up, involve your peers, your stakeholders, your teams, and to start with the foundational question of what are our objectives, perhaps even what is our target audience first, and what are our objectives with that target audience, and what are our core values as a company, in our case, or as an event planner or association, and how can we stay true to what we believe and deliver, and what are our objectives with that target audience before we even start thinking about the what and the how. I think that's like your line of questions triggered me to go in that direction. I think that's fundamental, and that's also, I think, what, if you look back now at successful events and companies that strive throughout the pandemic, I think it's all about the companies that manage to adapt, and managing to adapt means all of that, questioning your assumptions, looking at discovering and discussing where you want to go, looking at the data, not shying away from the conclusions, and then take it from there, one step at a time, in an agile way. Don't pretend to know everything at once, but just take it one step at a time and keep testing your assumptions by putting them out there and seeing what comes out of that.
And when I think back pre-pandemic, and maybe not immediately pre-pandemic, but in maybe going back a decade, events that ran in a live situation that were maybe just starting to consider a new term that they'd found called live streaming, a decade ago. If we think of events as they were in their traditional sense 10 years ago, 15 years ago, event organizers would claim that they are adaptable. Every year they would say, oh yeah, we're doing things slightly differently. We're going to change this area of our event, or we're going to change that area. But really, there were subtle tweaks that they were making to their probably already successful event, and actually being adaptable was not maybe the case. They were just refining on a year by year basis. The landscape has changed massively now, hasn't it? It's not just about events having been adaptable in the last 2 years, but they now have to build in an ongoing level of adaptability, knowing that year to year their audience may change. Their percentages between live and their online audience, if they're running a hybrid event, is maybe going to swing and move along a sliding scale every year, depending on what people's commitments are. Building that ongoing adaptability is something really that I think is key, both for the organizers and their tech partners.
Absolutely. Adaptability is needed when the world around you changes. So if the world around you is at a plateau, it's just not changing, it's what it is, then you're probably right to think, we have something good going on here. Let's not change it. Adapting things then is a risk, will likely lead to a worse outcome.
Sure.
You've reached a plateau along with the world around you. The moment the world is no longer in a plateau, but its emotion is changing, and clearly the world has been in a big, in emotion, unlike we've seen it for many, many years. Staying still, don't changing, that's the thing that's going to kill you. You need to be adapting. And, that sort of shock, that sort of wake-up call, I think was needed in a way, because the world around us was changing, even though people in the industry may felt it was just fine to organize the same kind of event as last year. Why would you change anything? We felt as an event tech company, it was really hard to sell something new, because something new was scary. And the payoff of something new for the customer, for the organizer, was not clear. So, why would you take the risk of investing in something for which you're not even sure like what the outcome would be? So that mindset sort of shake up was needed, and I think is good for the industry, because we now pretty much know how to deal with with a pandemic, I would say. So the next time a pandemic comes on, if it's not, God forbid, hopefully not again, but especially if it's not too far ahead, we'll still remember all the best practices from now. But I think the more fundamental thing that has changed is the mindset change of, other things may be changing as well. And what actually is changing, to question that, what actually has changed out of our view, which we may not have been aware of. And then trying to talk, it usually starts with gathering data, which is not always as, let's say, scientific as just reading out a sensor, but it's more about talking to people, asking the right questions, and then building your new understanding of what's needed in this day and age. That's what you do.
And we've spoken at length on the podcast, particularly towards the latter part of 2020 and early 21, as we were creeping towards the end of the first year of the pandemic, about the shock to the system, not just for the events industry, but for all businesses, because all businesses are guilty, I think, of not wanting to instigate significant change for fear that it will disrupt their ongoing business too much. Most businesses want to, as I said, make subtle changes, refinements, carefully tweak and slightly change and improve their practices for fear that a significant change could disrupt what they're doing. And loads of people, particularly the tech companies like Conference Compass, could see that event organizers needed to embrace new technology and think about things in a different way in order to comply with the requirements and the demands, really, I suppose, of the modern world. And it took something as significant as a pandemic to to shock them into having to do that because they had no choice. And I've said this for a year or so now that, we will, if we're not doing it already, we will certainly look back on this, not with fondness, because it was not a great situation, but certainly we will realize in years to come that actually it was a blessing in some ways, because it shocked everybody, like, as you termed it, into making that significant change and realizing actually it could benefit their business. And an analogy that I'd like to sort of draw a comparison to is I've seen a couple of shops and bars near where I live in the last year or so that have signs in their windows still saying cash only.
Mhm.
And I asked one of them, why do you take why have you not got, contactless payment, or, what, that's how everyone pays now. Why is he cash? Well, I don't want to pay the fees associated with having the machine there,
Mhm.
because it's going to cost me money as a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than seeing it the other way around, which is I make that investment in the technology and actually it will attract more business in, because it will increase my audience, the potential audience of people. It's the wrong way of looking at it. And I think that events before the pandemic were the shopkeeper who only takes cash, and they've had to move they've had to make that investment.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. It reminds me of, I guess, of a feeling we've been guilty of as well. The feeling that if you have something good going, the risk the risk of changing seems high. So we've always, in our culture, in our company culture, we've always wanted to instill a sense of urgency, of not like a rat race, not like making everyone crazy and
Sure.
and go to burnout, but we always, like in practice, we always invest in our product development as much as we can afford. So we have, obviously we have a buffer. We need to take care of continuity of the business, but we don't like a big buffer. So we wanna make sure that we go on. Well, that also instills this sense of urgency that there needs to be a payoff, and that it needs to lead to, let's say, a good evolution of our product into things that we can sell and that our customers are needed for. That in turn instills an urgency that we need to have our eyes and ears open and listen to them, and not be complacent into just thinking that we understand. So there's this whole sequence of I think mindsets that follows from our decision as a company to be aggressive in the way we push our product development. So that has always kept it on edge. It has always made sure that we felt an urgency to do the right things, and that has helped us, I very much believe, at the start of the pandemic, to not do anything radical, but just to push that further, because the urgency was even greater, and we knew how to deal with urgency and how we needed to listen and how we needed to take facts at face value and discuss them and study them and draw our own conclusions. So I think the death of our company would be if we would, in a way, and it sounds paradoxical, if we would flourish so well that we think, okay, just we got it, we understand it, we know how everything works, let's just take it easy and just, let's write this one out. We have something great going on. I mean, that will work for a year or two, but then we will lose the culture of being, on edge, of being, let's say, the urgency of being smart and trying to always continue and improve.
Yeah, I'm grinning slightly because you used the word paradoxical, and I've just written on my note here paradox. And the paradox that I see certainly with the event tech industry and with event tech suppliers is that we're talking about adaptability today. So your platform has to be adaptable enough to be able to shift and be chameleon like, I suppose, depending on the client's requirements. But similarly, you also don't just want to have to change your entire platform for every different client that you work with. You've got to have a certain amount of faith and confidence in the platform and the technology that you have built as a business to be able to say to clients, look, this is the solution as we see it, and we are confident in this. So it's that interesting balance. I don't know if it's paradox or balance between having faith in your product and what you have designed and the level of flexibility that's required in order to meet the demands of the clients you're working with.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I think there are 3 levels here. So first level is, we've talked about that, sort of our company culture and how we adapt, how we always listen and adapt our platform. So on that level, there is maybe not a paradox, but there is a tension between 2 forces. So the one force of wanting stability and just, we have something good, let's not change it, because we also don't want to destabilize the platform. On the other hand, go fast and listen to customers. The other tension is between standardizing and adding more and making things easy as a result, versus building in more dials and buttons to customize the platform, inevitably making it more complicated to operate. That's a clear tension that we've had since the day we started, because we know we can only have good prices into the market, like a good price model, and be affordable to our customers if we standardize a lot. On the other hand, we also know that every good event has its own character and has its own identity, and needs a platform that's adaptable and adjustable. Also, because events itself is a term that's so wide, like we go from corporate events to scientific conferences, medical conferences. These are vastly different kind of events, and our platform in over years has evolved to cater both of them really, really well. So that's level one. The other level is of how our platform is able to allow customers to be adaptable. So that level is about our platform offering solutions to customers who are not sure, should our event go fully in person. A lot of our customers are like, we very much hope so, but also faced with the reality and the uncertainty of, okay, there's probably going to be another wave, but is it going to be significant? Is it going to affect us to the level that we've been affected in the last years? How shall we approach that uncertainty? That's where our platform comes in, offering solutions to customers to set up the platform in a way and being able to shift easily from fully virtual, from fully in person to fully virtual, or anything in between. And there are a couple of other tools that we've built in to allow that, for instance, allowing speakers to pre-record their presentations so that the content is all captured and that you have all that content in case a speaker is unable to travel, if you were planning for in person, or if and by the way, in with like 2 birds with 1 stone, also tackle the age-old problem of conference organizers of no-shows. So, okay, the person really committed to traveling to the conference with their oral presentation or their poster, and they're not there, and then you have a gap in the program, or you have a gap in the poster board, and it's just terrible. So, okay, great. So, and having the content available as well for on-demand watching afterwards is something we've got used to. Many of our clients got addicted to almost after the pandemic. All the content was captured and it was there, fantastic, without any additional investment of on-site AV. Now allowing on our platform to capture the speakers' recordings in advance, you have all of that stuff also after the event, even if the event was in person and you didn't go for the full AV recording equipment with all the staffing. So there's the adaptability on that level as well. So our platform, our feature set is rich, and even if it wouldn't evolve, it would still allow our customers to be adaptable in that sense.
And I always think it's particularly pertinent that we call those recordings, anything that we generate out of platforms like Conference Compass in terms of videos, on-demand content, we refer to them as assets. And of course, from a financial point of view, you would refer to an asset as anything that has financial value to you, a property, a car, hardware, in a business, give us a list of your assets, and I think it's particularly pertinent that we refer to them as assets that are generated from these, because that's how people should be viewing them, isn't it? That these offer, financial value, and that's really, I think, one of the biggest messages that was pushed by the tech companies to event organizers is, look at all of this. It's not just content. View it as an asset. View it as something of value that you can actually turn into revenue if you use it correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, assets, I think for many event planners, is the content on the one hand, and the attendees, the communities on the other hand, and the engagement between them. So it's those two critical elements that make or break an event, and that's actually the whole reason for existing of our industry: content and people.
It is. And on the subject of people, there's something I'd like to ask you. Is that we're getting towards the end of time on today's episode, but it's to do with young people, and something I've been thinking about recently, because I have a son who is 16 years old. He's just about to do his exams at the end of his secondary education, before he then goes to 2 years of studying in college and then potentially university. So in 5 years' time, he'll be 21, and he'll be entering probably the world of work and looking for a career and a job somewhere. But at 16 years old, he can go onto pretty much any type of platform on his mobile phone or on his laptop, and he will be able to use it within a matter of minutes. There's just an intuitive nature, because children of that age have grown up now using touch screens, using laptops, using intuitive platforms. I'm curious as to whether or not in 5 years' time, when the young people who are 16 now are entering the world of events, for example, using platforms like Conference Compass, is there going to be a sudden jump in the skill set of the people who are using those, who are working for event organizers? They're going to get it so much quicker, with far much less training required to understand the platform, that suddenly you're going to see in this jump of usability, where people are getting loads more out of their technology just because of the skill set of the young people who are then potentially using it.
That's a super interesting thought. Yeah, that's absolutely a trend that supports the event tech side of things, right? So just the way of growing up with technology in general, and how you use that in like this intuition almost to use and apply all of that into better events from our perspective as customers, but also for us as a company. Like, I'm now 40 years old, turning 41 very soon. So I can't pretend any longer to be the younger generation, right? Like that's something I can no longer pretend to be.
Me and you both.
Yeah, right. So, and actually, if you look in our company, we have, I think, a nice range of 20-year-olds to 45, 50-year-olds. And it's absolutely crucial to not treat the younger generation as, I guess, the interns and the juniors who just need to listen and do what they're being told. No, quite the opposite, right? To see them as assets, and to see them as some as a learning opportunity for the rest of us. I think then we go back sort of to go full circle to adaptability, to always keep your eyes and your ears open, and to not live your life, your professional life, your personal life, on the basis of assumptions that you think are just and cannot be challenged, can never be challenged. But to see professional life, personal life as a journey with so many opportunities and so many exciting things ahead of us, if only we have our eyes open and see what's right in front of us. I think that's a great note to end the podcast, because I think there's lots of optimism in our industry of what the pandemic and everything else, also the climate crisis, is enabling us to do to provide just a better future.
You are absolutely right to end with the word optimistic in one of your final sentences, because that is very much where we are as an industry. At the moment, there is a great sense of optimism and enthusiasm and positivity, which we commend everybody who's working in the industry at the moment on those sort of attitudes and the events that I've been to, the people that I've spoken to and fortunate enough to speak to on the podcast. That is overwhelmingly the impression that I get from everybody that's involved. So yes, you're quite right to say that as we wrap up today's episode, Jelmer. We've been talking on the podcast today to Jelmer van Ast, who is the CEO and founder at Conference Compass, who has joined us today from his base over in The Hague in the Netherlands. If you want to find out a little bit more about what those guys are up to, conference-compass.com is the website. Head over there and you can find about what the guys are up to. There are social links and connections to LinkedIn and things off the website there. So if you want to find out a bit more about Conference Compass and what Jelmer and his team are up to, conference-compass.com is the website, and that website is being displayed on the screen at the moment. So if you are watching this already on the Event Industry News website, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you whenever you're tuning into this. Don't forget that you can listen to audio versions of all of our podcasts just by going to wherever you get your podcasts from on your mobile device. Of course, if you're already doing that and you are listening to us today, well, hello to you. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget that you could go in the opposite direction over to eventindustrynews.com and tune into video versions of all of our podcasts, as well as finding out about the latest news, features, supplements, everything that's going on in the events industry in all of those different sectors, festivals, conferences, trade shows in the world of tech, and find out what companies like Conference Compass are up to by following some of the links to the great suppliers that are on the eventindustrynews.com website. Thanks again, Jelmer. Thanks for joining us this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day. We will no doubt see you soon, either on a forthcoming episode or at one of our Event Tech Live events. But for now, we come to the end of today's episode of the Event Industry News podcast. It's been a pleasure as always, and we'll see you on the next edition. Goodbye, everybody.